Good morning, class. Today we are going to do the conversation questions for our articles. So each of you have your own article that you're going to read, and you're going to read independently. And I want you guys to find 4 or 5 different points that are either confusing, or you think they're important, or you just have some more questions about them. And while you're reading, make sure you underline and write your questions out to the side. There's plenty of room, and then when you guys get done with your individual work, put your pencils down so I know to come and see you guys. So you guys go ahead and start. As you're done, I want you guys to talk about the different things that you saw in your article that you want to discuss between each other. Ask a few questions. I'll give you guys about 5 minutes, and then I want you guys to bring up different points that we're going to talk about in class.
So, first thing I saw was with the dominant alleles, if a dominant allele is expressed over the recessive, does that mean that the recessive allele would be potentially eliminated from being able to further down the line if a dominant allele becomes more dominant, or is the chances the same throughout? On the first page.
Yeah, I know.
It's a good question, Ryan.
But a recessive allele doesn't mean that it goes away. It's just not dominant.
Yes, correct.
Yes, but could there be a trend of some sort that creates through a trend of generations of people, or does the chances always stay the same? No.
Alright guys, so let's go ahead and come together and we'll talk about a few things together as a group. So I'm recessive. I heard Ryan ask a really good question about dominant and recessive genes. Ryan, could you read your first question that you had out loud?
So if the dominant allele is expressed, is the recessive eliminated in the next?
Okay.
offspring?
So a dominant allele is a big P. This is something that it will always overpower the little p, the recessive. So if you have a genotype that's big P, little p, this P is going to show up on your phenotype, your physical, what you physically look like. But if you have 2 little p's, then you don't have a dominant P there. So that means your little p's will be what your phenotype is. So there's nothing that's going to overpower any of the little p's because there's no big P. So your big P is dominant, and most of the time those are things like brown hair, brown eyes. There can be more of a short height. All kinds of different things are more dominant. There are things that are more common. So when we did our activity earlier, there were more people who had brown hair on the side of the room than there were people that had blonde hair on the side of the room.
If 2 people, you say you have a dominant P and a recessive P, and 2 people procreate, and their child, their offspring, the recessive gene wins out, and then it gets a recessive trait. Now, when they have offsprings, does that recessive trait become dominant in them, so therefore it becomes dominant?
It always stays recessive. So that's a good segue into our Punnett squares. So a Punnett square is the way to find out what the percentage of genetics would be. So you just basically draw a big square and then split it hot dog style and hamburger style, okay? So then, Ryan, give me 2 alleles. So give me a genetic type.
Like as in letters? Or?
Okay, so let's say this is Dad, and he's big R, little r. So that means Dad has heterogeneous alleles. So this is his genotype. So let's say R, big R is brown eyes, and little r is blue eyes. All right, Terry, could you give me one for Mom?
T.
Can we try to pick the same letter and just give me a pattern. Give me a different gene. So just like Ryan did 2 letters, pick 2 R's. Pick whatever 2 R's you want. 2 big ones, 2 little ones, the same one.
Little R.
Okay, so then we have 2 little R's. Okay, so when you do your Punnett square, you bring down the letter from the top to each box. So we'll have an R and an R. So we'll come over here and we'll bring this one down. We have little r, little r. Okay? So then you bring these across. Little r, little r, little r, little r. Okay, so brown is dominant and blue is recessive. Ryan, what are the genes if your child has these genes?
The brown.
Brown, correct. So it'll be brown because there is a big R and it's dominant, so it'll take over the little r. So before we leave class today, I want you guys to flip over on the back of one of your sheets and I want you to make your own Punnett square. And go ahead and fill it out and give me your dominant and your recessive and what it stands for before we leave.